data. And there is a brief description of each of those strategies in the report as well. So I apologize that this got to you just yesterday, but I did want to give you a chance to provide us with some feedback and thoughts as it relates to the 4 strategies. And on your desk, there is a box sheet. There's 4 boxes. And I was hoping that you would all be willing to share some of your thoughts as it relates to those strategies. So I was thinking you could write an idea into one of the boxes, the one that is the most pressing or most of interest to you, and answer one or more of the questions or anything that comes to mind as it relates to feedback, input, and perspectives on each of those strategies, starting with 1. And then we could pass that sheet and you could read what your fellow board members have said, as well as add to it. And then we can take that feedback that you have to help us guide the work as it relates to those 4 strategies for the next 6 months. I came up with some examples just to help identify what we're looking for here. Maybe you have some ideas about subcommittees. Maybe when thinking about the school calendar, don't forget to engage those community partners. A way of getting feedback as it relates to the new teacher induction and experience would be to ask current teachers about their experience, about what would be helpful for them, and then data about a dashboard or something that is visible to the public. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes. Any box, you can pick any box. The one that is the most exciting to you, just jot down some notes in a way that somebody else could at least read your handwriting, and then we will have a chance to hear from each of you about those thoughts.
So if I can catch up for just a minute, I'm so sorry for being late. I apologize to all of you for that. But are the slides that you just went through a part of this, or do I need to get my computer out and look at them?
The slides are a summary, so there's not anything in the slides that wouldn't be of help in the report. And I didn't print, it's a 41-page report, so I've provided you with the pages, the first few pages, as it relates to the strategies and the implementation phase.
So I apologize to all of you. I have had a family crisis, and so I have not seen my email for that. Thank you. I'm sorry, I've had a family crisis, and so I have not read this or your 40-page document.
You don't have to read the 40-page. Just okay. The first page, I think it's 2 through 3, would have the 4 identified strategies for the next 6 months.
Okay. I just know that I shouldn't participate since I don't know what I'm talking about, so that's where I am. Thank you.
I'm really bad at staying in the lines. You don't follow the rules either, do you? I'm going to turn this off.
All right, now you can write on one box, or if you have a lot of time, you can fill out more than one box. This will be the last time we pass them. So at the end of writing in your box or boxes, we have a chance for questions or comments on what either you have written or what you see your fellow board member has written.
I was late to class. Can you repeat the instructions?
Yeah. So you should have a grid in front of you, a sheet with some boxes. Do you see it? Okay. You got it. So the pages 2 through 3 of what is printed there in the report that was sent yesterday has those 4 areas of focus or strategies: cross-department collaboration, school calendar, new teacher induction or the experience, and consistent, clean, readily available data. So once you've had a chance to review those, to share your ideas, thoughts, feedback, what should we not forget, who should we not forget to engage, what questions do you have about this particular strategy or focus, you can jot those on the box. So I'll give you just another minute and then open it up for your feedback, and I'll answer a question about the calendar. So Dr. Anderson asked, what does it mean, the school calendar? How does that impact, or how could that impact some of these initiatives? So listening to the advisory boards, the calendar is a topic of interest, and that a lot of it revolves around professional learning, but it also revolves around time within the day for professional learning or PLCs, or setting time aside. What is it? Is it about a meeting? Is it about spending time planning in my classroom? There's talk about when the school year starts and ends. So I think that a lot of the experience with respect to climate and culture is also impacted around professional development, and then how does all of that work to impact student achievement? So I don't really know what the answer is with respect to what the school calendar will look like or could look like. But I think that spending some time thinking about possibilities, researching what other communities are doing, and taking the feedback that we hear from those advisory boards to see, what does this mean? Is there anything there that could impact these initiatives? The school year calendar for next year is set, so this isn't going to be about changing that school year calendar. All right, so I'm definitely going to collect all of those pieces of paper, but if there is someone who would like to comment or ask a question about what they're reading from their fellow board members, we have a couple of minutes for questions and feedback. Yeah.
Well, I'll say one thing off the bat. I think that that to me, we're doing the same calendar that we've been doing when we were a one building schoolhouse, and that kids had to tend the fields by the time the crops were coming in. I don't understand why there's not more thought into year-round schooling, you know, with healthy breaks, you know, throughout the year. I don't know what other school districts have done. I don't know if I know it's been tried. I don't know what the research says. But it just seems to me that we all talk about summer loss. We all talk about, you know, the need for, you know, playing catch up in the fall, and I just I think we just are kind of, we keep plowing the same row and get the same results, and then kind of wonder, well, why are kids not progressing as well as they should from year to year? That's my idea.
So, and I think that's one of the reasons it's on here, right? Is there something we can do that looks at that?
So I would just, I guess, pose for consideration. I know that with a lot of our student holidays, that there are still teachers in the building or staff in the building. I would wonder if we could somehow partner with leisure services or community partners to actually have programs in the school building, since they're already there. A lot of those programs still have free meals, free lunches, and if there was a way for students to still be able to walk to school, even if they don't have school, but have some type of pro-social activity that's not going to be at a large loss to our budget, and still offer them some semblance of supervision, pro-social things, I think that could be very beneficial, especially if we're going to go to having a neighborhood schools model where we engage them more.
Yes.
Okay, so I think I'm caught up now, but I definitely appreciate what Greg is saying in terms of we have a whole school system built on a one-room schoolhouse 200 years ago. And so my question would be, does the calendar serve the role that we're supposed to play in educating the children? And if we look at our results, that would cause us to question that if we think that this is a big factor in so doing. And then my question is there a sufficient time to actually do knowledge transfer in our calendar. I love the fact that we do professional development. I know that we have some scheduled breaks throughout, and so those things are necessary for teacher sanity as well as for the students to have a moment to try and actually reflect on what they're learning. But my question would really be, do we actually know what it would take to build a calendar that would meet the needs of the education that we're trying to convey to our children?
Anyone else? Yeah.
I had a thought about this very exciting cross-department collaboration, which just rings all my bells, so that's great. Last year, before I got to know you, we did a lot of policy review and revision, and one of the things about that process that was really interesting and fun was when we had policies that required more than one department to come together. And that was exciting, and I wondered if that process that we did the past couple of years might serve as one of the ways you could implement this effort. It looks like you're trying to get departments to work together more, and that may be one framework that would provide motivation, because people get excited and interested in policies that affect the kids, and working together towards policies seemed like a really common thing that brought people together.
Right.
I guess is what I would say. So
Thank you.
I wrote that in my box, but I'll offer that up as something for everybody to think about.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess we should have taken one topic at a time, because I still want to make one more thing about the school calendar.
Yeah, and we can have this conversation, or y'all can continue to jot in your boxes or write in your emails about this. I don't think we have time to do all four. Everybody have a comment, but if you have something else about the calendar that you didn't get a chance to write down.
Okay. Actually, I did on this sheet, not my sheet. But one thing that I think is from what I hear from teachers, and having been a teacher and retired teacher, is that teachers are not given the opportunity to collaborate informally. I mean, we're all big on, let's get everybody together on people's planning periods and collaborate. Some of my most effective work as a school teacher was working with fellow teachers in the social studies department, one-to-one, if we had common planning periods, or immediately after school when we didn't have faculty meetings 3 times a week or whatever. And like I say, I don't know what the schedule is today, but I do hear from teachers that they just don't have the informal time to, I used to spend my time lining up speakers to speak to my citizenship classes, but that takes time to do that, so.
Thank you.
Oh, nice. I know I didn't do the activity, but I'm sorry. Did I jump in front of you as well?
Go for it.
This is piggybacking on what you said, though. I had decided that in my next life, I was going to do something similar to what you said. It breaks my heart every time we're on break and I drive down Hawthorne and the kids have to be out of the shelters by like 7:30 in the morning. And to watch them when it's freezing, it's raining, and to have nowhere to go for the entire day is probably like, I literally almost cry every time we have no school for that reason, because I watch those parents have to be out of the shelter with those children and they have nowhere to be for the entire day. And so I think some type of, and that's actually cross-departmental collaboration, I think that's calendar, I think that's intergovernmental collaboration, but there has to be a way. There just has to be some way that we can serve children who are in that kind of situation or other similar situations that don't have options. And so I've had kind of self-committed that that was going to be a personal project, but hearing that it shouldn't be. So I just had to piggyback on that because it's heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah. All right, well, I appreciate all your feedback. I will, of course, type it up and share it back with you all. I think we have a running start, at least on the school calendar ideas. Are there any questions about the report? All right, well,
I've got one. It seems like that we are further ahead on 1.1.1. Because we are expanding early Head Start and Head Start, so I was thought that was one of our big achievements for this year, but maybe.
So, yeah, I think that we are improving. I think we haven't had everybody enroll. There's room for more numbers. I think we can expect to see that move to green in the next year. I was a fair grader, I think. Thank you all. I'll come get your paper.
Thank you. This was a great report to have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Bones. And Dr. Anderson, if you want to now go back, and then we can call us to order.
Okay, we have a quorum, so we are going to call the meeting to order. Dr. Thomas, would you like to do roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
Here.
Ms. Gallagher? Mrs. Davis? Dr. Yeager?
Here.
Dr. Dykeman?
Here.
Dr. Anderson?
Here.
Dr. Gant? Attorney Hull?
Here.
And Dr. Maddox?
Here.
Thank you. And now we will move to item number 2, to amend or adopt the agenda.
Dr. Anderson, I would like to request that we amend the agenda for 2 reasons. One, we had 3 individuals who have worked with us for a number of years who were accidentally omitted from the personnel list, and those names are at your seats. So I would like to amend the agenda to approve that personnel list. And also for our executive session, we had listed for personnel, but we would also like to add to consider a matter involving the disclosure of personal identifiable information from a student's educational records to that.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion? Someone make a motion? I motion we
Yes,
do what
ma'am.
you just
Thank
did. Do what you just said.
Thank you.
Do I need to?
Call a vote.
Oh, what am I doing?
Call a vote. That's what it
Oh,
says.
I'd like to call a vote. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Better together.
Fantastic. That vote has passed unanimously. Next, we will move to item number 5, discussion of strategic priority 4, human capital compensation study. Dr. Blankenship?
I'm sorry, Ms. Palmer takes care of us. We need to,
I move to, would someone like to move to adopt?
so
the-
moved.
I second.
Can we call a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
and then we have number 3, sorry, which is the amended FY22 budget, and then we have Dr. Blankenship.
Nope.
There we go. And I've got to apologize as well about getting this out to you just today. We're really in crunch time, and we met with Dr. Thomas this morning, and I think I got out of your office at about 9:30, and when I got back, we finally got the information that we've been waiting for from GDOE in order to pull all this information together and have this recommendation for you. So just a reminder, this is House Bill 910, the annual or amended fiscal year 22 budget for the state. A few things that it does. Number one, it's eliminating the austerity that was assessed against our QBE allotment. And so what that means for us is a net $1.8 million to the green. It's also providing for a $2,000 supplement for any kind of QBE covered positions, B, transportation employees, and also C, school food personnel. In addition, we will receive a school bus allotment. Last year we got 3 additional buses around this time. We don't have that information yet, but really what we need to do is just focus on number 1 and 2 for now. So here is what the numbers look like. In the middle column is the initial fiscal year budget for QBE and what was received. Our QBE budget was $68.9 million. After the amendment and the refund of the austerity, as well as the $2,000 that we're receiving in QBE for bus drivers and all other staff, that $68.9 million is going up to $74.4 million. That difference is a total of $5.5 million to the good of CCSD. Second thing we need to talk about is the $2,000 supplement. We're planning on paying this or distributing it April 1st, which is, I think it's the Friday before spring break. This supplement weaves together many different funding sources. So at the top, the very top line item, you can see that we've got, as of the October CPI report, 2,422 unduplicated employees. So these are full-time and part-time employees. Out of those 2,422, all but 363 are funded with some fund source. So as we go down, the first funding source is QBE. That's the additional allotment. We're going to receive that on April 30th. It's covering 1,697 employees. We're also getting a pupil transportation. It's allotment that's also coming through our QBE allotment on April 30th. That's covering 116 employees. School food, they're going to get a payment through their school nutrition portal, and that's covering 115 employees. Pre-K and early Head Start, they're getting their funds separately. We've already received pre-K's power supplement, but we've held on to it until we have the full picture, and now that we do, we also want to include that in the April 1st payment. And the only employees that we won't be paying directly are the early Head Start and Head Start folks that are going to be paid directly from DECAL. But the key takeaway from this is, out of our estimated 2,422 employees right now that we have, all but 363 of those employees are funded. So the second step in the recommendation that we'll have for you tonight is to fund the remaining 363 employees at the same level the remaining staff are employed at. And the cost to CCSD is $1,006,351 to do that. Now, we've got a couple different ways to fund that. We can either fund that with ESSER funds, or we can fund it with general funds. And the recommendation on the table tonight, which is the third part of this presentation, is that we're going to start out using general funds. Yes, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to support that. But of the 363 that were not covered, I know some of them would be teaching positions that would not be eligible according to QBE, perhaps in social worker positions.
I've got a listing in here. I think it's
Oh, do you? Okay,
one of my, because I kind of anticipated that question. I think maybe you asked that last time as part of the QBE formula, what positions does it cover?
Right.
They gave us a listing of exactly what positions are covered.
So are you going to be able to give us a listing of who's not covered?
Not names.
No, I don't mean names, positions.
I could potentially, I could run some sort of listing of the CPI codes that are covered, and then also look at what codes are not, or then we also have all of our codes and kind of do a unique lookup and say, yeah, these are the ones that aren't covered. I can do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
I second that. Thank you.
And, Mr. Schooneman, is some of that because we fund some teaching positions over what we're allocated, so some of them, is that correct or not?
It goes back to the QBE funding formula, and as long as we, their position, their salary is determined and funded in the QBE formula, we may have positions over and above what's funded in there, but as long as it's part of that QBE formula, whether or not we've got, 5 and they only fund us 4, it would be covered. So
would like plant services be covered, or?
So here is the listing of all of the categories that
Okay,
are
thank you.
QBE funded.
Thank you. So like our grounds, plant services, heating and air, plumbing, those people
Correct.
are a good bulk of those who are not covered by the state funding. I think that might help answer,
Exactly. And like
because the list is, you see
tech-
that?
No, I
Technology.
see the list.
Oh.
I think what I'm trying to tease out is what I would call overhead.
Mhm.
In terms, because I hope we have more social workers than the state allows by QBE, I hope. And the same thing with our teaching staff and technology specialists too. Is that all they're gonna give us? That doesn't seem very practical, so.
For instance, social workers right there, we have 11, and I can tell you that our formula for, social worker per student is a more robust
Right.
than our surrounding counties and RISA, for sure.
So I wouldn't think that we have 11, I would say we have more than 11. Is that fair? We don't know. That's
We
okay.
have 11. We have 11.
We do?
Yep.
Okay.
So what I heard you say is that those people, even though there are more of them than are covered by our QVE, they're getting the 2,000 from the state
That's correct.
as is. It's the folks that are not covered, like the grounds people and things that we're making up.
That's correct.
So will we get an allotment or a supplement for the positions that are listed, even if we don't have them?
So all the ones that you see up here that are QBE funded, these are the ones in the previous slide that we're getting funding for. So that second line, QBE covered positions, 1,697 of them. We're getting a total of $3.4 million to cover those positions. This slide is just a breakdown of which positions those are.
So what are we gonna do with the 6,000 for the assistant superintendents? Because that says we have 3 of those positions, and I wasn't aware that we have 3 of those, so where does that go?
This is just the translation for each position that we have at CCSD. You have to assign like a job code that most closely describes your line of work. And so we may not call it an assistant superintendent, but I think Dr. Thomas.
So like one of it might be 3 of our chief, like certified chief positions, and then we would pay the additional 3 chiefs or how. So we could assign, I think that's correct, we talked about it earlier. So you could say, I'm just throwing out, the chief of HR, chief of finance, and chief of operations would be 3 that in the past were like assistant superintendent level positions. Just under previous leadership, the titles changed, so those would be comparable to that. And so then those other 3 maybe then have to come out of that 363 people. Does that make sense?
A little bit, but I can follow up with specific questions
Okay.
about how those supplements are assigned and that kind of stuff.
So the 2,000 goes to everyone,
Right.
but they only give us for those different categories,
For 3.
The three,
Okay.
yes.
But
Mhm.
we will still fund.
So then we would just then absorb like we would do for plant services
I
or
got you.
whoever else, yes.
That makes sense.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes. So we would pick it up and those other three would then fall in those remaining, that 363, those other three people would be there.
And we did get, just for a little affirmation, we got this information this morning, and immediately all the CFOs in the surrounding counties said, hey, what's your plan? Are you guys funding everybody? And uniformly, everyone's recommendation was to fund all employees.
This is probably a dumb question. We're not sending any money back, are we?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead,
In
Ms.
fact,
Hall.
right now, the count that this was based on, 2,422 active employees in October. Our March CPI report was due, I think, today, and when I was looking at it, the number is less than that. So this is really a worst-case scenario,
Okay.
and I anticipate what actually goes out the door being less than 363 that's not covered.
Great.
Ms. Hall, you had a question?
I do, and it may be more so for just the purpose of the minutes when the board circles back around to it. But with the slide that lists the funded positions, that was given to us from the Department of Education, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So did they, or do you know if this is like what's average around the state in terms of these types of positions for each school district, or was there some type of rubric? And I ask this because I know we as a board have kind of talked about looking at doing an HR audit or a position audit. So if there is information or data that the Department of Education already has about positions and what it has gathered, I think that could be helpful for us to consider in future use if we are looking at having a position audit. So that is why I ask. I don't know if that came from a study or.
This is, where this is pulled from is the October CPI report, and they actually provide us this same information for every district in the state.
Thank you.
So just a couple facts about this $2,000 supplement. The date that the law, that it was signed into law was March 16th. So that's the measurement date. So unfortunately, if you were hired March 17th, you don't qualify, or if you resigned March 15th, you don't qualify. So you have to be employed actively and in good standing as of March 16th in order to qualify. Full-time and part-time employees would get the full $2,000 as long as the part-time employee is scheduled to or works at least 19 hours per week on average. These payments are not TRS eligible. They are going to be taxed. And then just once again, we can cover that additional $1 million that it's going to cost over and above what we're getting different funding sources from. We can either pay that with ESSER funds or with general fund money.
So you recommended that we pay them out of general funds. What, is there like an advantage to doing that over paying it out of ESSER?
Just that we haven't met as a cabinet to talk about the ESSER budget and where we could put it in there. And for time's sake tonight, my recommendation is stemming from the House bill allotment here. So we are receiving an additional $5.5 million. Out of that, we know that we're going to pay all those bus drivers and the other staff that are covered in the QBE slide that you just saw, and that would still leave us about $2 million additional that we're going to receive that wasn't budgeted. So my recommendation was, hey, we've got these funds in the general fund. Let's go ahead and tonight and approve those payments. At a later date, we could come back to you and say, hey, it's more appropriate to shift that into ESSER, but just for tonight, just because of the timing, we had recommended putting it in general fund for now.
So we would only have to do one amendment tonight for budget, and then we could come back and do an amendment later when we're doing another ESSER amendment and move that money back over.
Okay.
I got one. So on the budget, I remember last year that we moved the 6.5 million. I'm gonna keep on asking about the 6.5. Did we pay off the 6.5 million? when we moved it over?
So what we did is we shifted expenditures that we already had to a different source. And then the ESSER grants are on a refund, not a refund, it's on a recoupment basis. So we already expended the funds, and so we're shifting it to a different fund source, and then basically claiming that for reimbursement from the state. And yes, ma'am, we already did that.
So it's already washed?
It's already done, yes.
Okay. And then, on the list of, thank you, Malachi. The contractors are not considered employees, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And so the next,
Yeah,
Go
let me
ahead,
just
Ms.
say, I think it's great to take it out of the general fund because, again, ESSER is short-term. And so I want our records to reflect that we are keeping a balance in the general fund, or that should be a line item in the general fund until we can bring that equity in wages across the board. So it's okay if you approve it later, but it should definitely be coming from the general fund on the first round.
Can I ask one last question? So the 2,000 that everyone's gonna get, the 2,400 employees are gonna get, next year, that 2,000 will be added to their salaries, right? And the district will be paying a portion of that out of the district's budget. But that does not include all 2,400 employees, correct? It's only at that point going to be classified teachers who get that $2,000 bump?
so as part of this one-time payment, this was making good on the governor's promise to increase salaries by $5,000. So the intention is to, everybody gets $2,000 now, but for next year, from the state's perspective, they're only going to require that you raise teacher salaries by $2,000 permanently. What Selena's going to talk about when she comes up is how we're taking this $2,000 and what we're doing with the salary tables to reach the different goals that we have. So I don't want to speak on her behalf, but she's going to touch on that in the next presentation. No.
We've been talking about this like every hour of every day and at home at night, but you are advanced, and so you're kicking us off. As soon as he finishes, it'll be perfect, queued up for Dr. Blankenship. So we'll pause you, but we are coming back to answer that. Yes.
I just want to make sure that the school board employees aren't not included on this 2,000.
We have not included them, yes.
Just checking. Thank you. I would hope not.
So the action that's needed tonight is to actually amend our budget to account for the additional revenues and the additional expenditures as a result of the state's amended budget decision to supply us with money for $2,000 supplements to all of our employees, or the vast majority of our employees. So it's the superintendent and my recommendation to, one, increase the estimated general fund revenues by $5.5 million, and that's going to account for the austerity refund as well as the additional funds for the $2,000 payment for employees that are covered in the QBE formula. And then also increase the estimated general fund expenditures by $4.6 million to pay for and fund the $2,000 supplement to all employees paid on April 1st. Once that's done, you can see that there's going to be more revenue than there are expenditures. The remaining $849,000 will just increase our fund balance. So that's the recommendation that's on the table tonight, is increasing our revenues by $5.5 million, expenses by $4.6 million, and our anticipated fund balance addition by $850,000.
Dr. Anderson, it would be my recommendation that we accept the recommendation of Mr. Schumann.
Okay.
I won't do it this time. Who wanted to do it? Okay, it's me. I so move.
Well, second.
All right, let's call the vote. All in
Oh.
favor?
I got a question,
Okay, are there any other questions?
or a
Mr. Davis?
caveat. Okay, I'm going to certainly vote for this, but I do want to emphasize that to me, it's not just an exercise of wasted energy to really try to tease out those 363 because it gets at a lot of questions that I've had. Thank you. But yes.
I believe it's against Robert's Rules of Order to make additional comments once you call a vote. Is that correct?
No,
No? You
This
can-
is gonna
okay.
call for the
I just
question.
want to make sure. Okay.
questions answered?
Are there any other questions before we call the vote?
Okay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously.
Awesome, thank you.
Now,
Fantastic.
perfect timing. We now have Dr. Blankenship who can answer your question as well as others.
Well, good evening, Board. I am excited. I feel like I haven't had this much anticipation since maybe I defended my dissertation. So it certainly has been a long journey over the course of this year, but I'm happy to come and share with you the progress that we're making around Strategic Priority 4, and specifically around how we are analyzing and addressing our compensation structures to ensure consistent and competitive salaries for all of our employees. So part of this initiative is to have a completed professional review and analysis of our salary tables and compensation structures, and then to implement those recommendations. And as you all know, we partnered with the Urban Schools Human Capital Academy in order to do this because we felt we needed a neutral party to help us with this work, and also one that provides more expertise than we have in-house. So we did that partnership. They completed a review and analysis of our salary tables, our compensation structure, and our business rules. And they provided us with recommendations on how to address our goal. Now we're in the phase of CCSD and USHCA working together and taking actions based on these recommendations. So what are those recommendations? There were 3 main recommendations. The first was that we needed to clarify and make transparent our compensation-related guidelines, processes, and procedures. So in other words, people need to know how they get paid, right? They need to know how they get placed on salary schedule and how they progress. And while we have processes and procedures around that, they are confusing. And so we need to clarify those. The second recommendation was to reorganize our current scales to create clarity for staff. We have multiple scales. It's difficult to know which scale, if you're not working in HR or with payroll, it's difficult to know which scale you fall on. And then the scales themselves can be confusing and unwieldy. For instance, our G scale, which is the scale that most classified and administrative personnel are on, has 114 grades currently. That is just way too many. So that was the second recommendation. And then the third recommendation was to adjust the grades and steps to provide for fair and meaningful compensation, progression of compensation over time. And so that really helps address any compression issues. And you may be asking what compression is. Compression is when there is little to no difference between salaries of employees where there exists a difference in skills, seniority, tenure, and so on. So we got feedback. If you remember, you completed a thought exchange several months ago. We also got feedback from many of our other stakeholder groups. So TAB representatives, our Student Advisory Council, a group of classified staff members, and leaders. And that feedback became our goals and considerations as we progress through this project. So you can see some of those listed here. Obviously, one of those was raising the minimum hourly wage for all employees, and $12.50 was mentioned at at the very beginning, although I'm going to talk about that as we go forward. We needed to consider the ability to staff hard-to-fill positions as we're thinking about compensation. We needed to provide appropriate levels of compensation along a pathway. So thinking about what the entry-level compensation is, and then how an individual might progress through a career pathway and see increased compensation along the way. We needed to take into account our area and regional markets and remain competitive there. We needed to value experience. We needed to look at how individuals progress through the steps on our salary schedule. And we also needed to make sure that we created something that would be sustainable for the long term and make sure that it was equitable. So where are we now? Here's what we've done so far. We've clarified 4 salary schedule categories: the teacher salary schedule, school-based administrators, non-teaching professional and support staff, and then our Head Start, Early Head Start. You may be wondering why Head Start, Early Head Start is a separate salary schedule. We actually looked at integrating them into the salary schedule, but in talking with Ms. Higginbotham, there are some very specific funding reasons that that salary schedule needs to remain separate for now, but that's going to be the next phase of some of our work, is to look at how we might integrate them into our own salary schedule in the future. We have also reviewed draft business processes and received feedback to guide the next phase of that work. We have a working committee that's made up of a number of cross-system department teams. So we have representatives from a variety of different departments and building leaders to help us give feedback and review those processes and procedures. And then we've consolidated our grades and adjusted and aligned the steps for the non-teaching salary schedule, which is that professional support salary schedule that results in the lowest hourly wage being at least $12.50 an hour. So I want to give you an example, because I know it makes it a little more concrete. I also want you to keep in mind that we're still in progress with this. So while I can't give you final numbers today, I want you to be assured that the minimum is $12.50. So I want to give you the example of a bus monitor. Bus monitors are one of our lowest paid employees, and right now, a bus monitor with 0 years of experience earns $9.91 an hour. With the steps that we've taken, so as you can see, we consolidated the grades from 114 down to 33. We then placed everyone on the new scale, maintaining their existing rate. So they were placed closest to, but not less than, their current salary. We also, let me just point out too, we needed to add a couple of steps to each grade, so we expanded the number of steps on a grade from 20 to 22 to allow us to be able to accurately place all employees on that scale. Then we adjusted for the $12.50 minimum, and part of that adjustment includes a $2,000 increase on all the steps on the scale. The state made that increase permanent for teachers, but at CCSD, we think it's important for us to provide that same permanent increase for all of our employees. So, at that point, we had to make some further adjustments to ensure that $12.50 minimum, right? So at the very lowest end of our scale, we adjusted a little bit more. So you've got a $2,000 increase across the board, but for those first initial grades, it ends up being a little bit more than $2,000. So, as you can see, the next step is that $9.91 an hour is moving to $12.50, a minimum of $12.50. Now, we are also note that that's the bare minimum, and we really want to do more. We acknowledge that over the past year, things have changed. And so while $12.50 seemed like a great goal a year ago, we see what companies around us are doing, and if we want to remain competitive, we need to look at doing more than that. So, right now though, it's still March. We gave you a timeline earlier that said that Byron would give you budget numbers April 15th. So we're still analyzing the budget, and we can't really say definitively what that final minimum amount will be, but just know that we are working to try to get that a good bit higher. So as we initially shared the budget timeline, Byron will be ready with numbers in April. And again, just know that we are committing to a minimum of $12.50 an hour for all employees, but we do have the desire to do more. We'll know how much that is once we finish analyzing all of those numbers. Byron has those, the information he needs now to begin doing some modeling. And so we are looking also, in addition to that $2,000 that we have already added to the salary schedule, of proposing a percentage increase. So that's information that we'll bring to you when Byron brings the budget in April. So some next steps for us are to model the cost for budget purposes, to convert the teacher salary scale and the school-based administrator salary schedule to easier to read formats. Right now, it's difficult, even for a teacher coming in, to look at the way our salary schedule is laid out and be able to pinpoint where they would be based on their current years of experience. So we're working on reformatting those schedules so they're easier to read. We're going to clarify and revise our compensation-related practices and business rules so that we can develop a publicly available document that's a salary plan guide that can be published on our website, that any person from the general public or any prospective employee can look at and understand how their compensation would be determined. And then once the budget is approved, we'll communicate new salary, grade, and step to each employee. So some of the highlights, just in case I've lost you somewhere along the way, everyone is receiving an increase. Those who are receiving the lowest hourly wage are receiving the largest percentage increase. In some cases, it's going to be 20 or more % increase in salary. And we are working to do more than the minimum while still being fiscally responsible. And so with that, I'll be happy to take your questions and move over here so the sun isn't directly in my eye.
First off, let me applaud you, which you knew I would, for setting a floor. And you're right, $12.50 a year and a half ago seemed a lot more than now. But what we've done is that we've established a floor, and now we know that we have to increase it because of the market, and also because of inflation. And so my question, and you may have covered it and I just missed it, do we have a way to, okay, I know step increases are based on seniority, so that's plugged in there. Do we have a percentage for a step increase for classified or not? Is that built into the model?
So for all of our salary schedules, each step is roughly around a 2% increase.
Okay. Do we have a cost of living built in?
So right now, there's not a cost of living built into the current salary schedules or the proposed salary schedules. But that is something that, with that percentage increase that we are looking to propose, that's one of the reasons that we're considering the percentage increases based on cost of living. And those are generally, my experience has been that when cost of living increases need to occur, they're generally applied across the whole salary schedule and across all salary schedules. Thank you for those questions.
So that would, just a follow-up, so that would not be just a bonus or whatever. It would be, the idea is to have some type of, it may not be, for instance, inflation this year may be 7%, and that may not be physically possible to match all 7%, but the idea is that it would be something that it would become automatic year after year and not simply so employees could count on it, is what I'm saying. I mean, like Social Security goes up for me twice a year, and so
Right.
I kind of count on that.
So in that case, Mr. Davis, what we would do, we're presenting you with our base salary schedules. Byron will run these numbers. He'll look at the cost of living and how that has gone up. He'll provide you with some options for a cost of living increase or a percentage increase. That's something that you could do. Then that would be permanent on that on the salary schedule. So we would raise the salary schedule by that amount. Then each year, you as a board have the opportunity to review the data that's provided by Mr. Schoeneman when he presents the budget, and he will make those kinds of recommendations about whether we need to do a 1%, a 2%, of whatever. But anytime we do that, it's generally placed permanently on that salary schedule. There are times when you might not do that, but that's generally what happens. Yes.
You mentioned looking around in the area and the region. Can you tell us where we are in that assessment? Are we, like you said, we're going to need to raise it up to be competitive in the, is that a big shift? Is there an idea, like what's your thinking around that? Is there a way we could recruit back some of the faculty that we've lost over the last few years to other districts because of the salaries?
So if we're looking at teacher salaries, I can tell you that we are near the top, but in our RESA region, we're about third. But when I say we're third by maybe $50, okay? So we're right there. There's one school district that's a couple $1,000, about $2,500 ahead of us. That's Walton County. And so our goal, of course, they're gonna get the $2,000 permanently as well, right? So that percentage increase that we look to provide on our salary schedules will help get us closer. Now, we can't control what other districts are doing as well, but right now, that's kind of where we are. We are one of the top paying districts in our RESA region.
And just a follow-up, third out of how many?
There's 13
Okay.
in our RESA region.
So to follow up to Dr. Yeager's question, when we look at, I know that that 1250, that seems to be this conversation that we've been having for at least the year that I've been here. I know that came from a study that was done several years back. When we talk about the hourly rate wages, how are we comparing now? And with this 1250, how will we compare? And I know that Dr. Schoeneman is gonna have to run these numbers, so I don't wanna put y'all on the spot, but it seems like 15 is really sort of that national conversation of the living wage, and can we get closer to that?
So I'll leave that question to Mr. Schoeneman.
And I'll just jump in and say we are trying really hard to stretch. And the conversation that I had was that I don't want us taking any action just because of compliance, but we should be taking action because it's the right thing to do by people as much as you can. And so even if someone out there said, well, $12.50 is a living wage, but is that right? And so I've really pushed us to look at our expenses, to look at, is there any fat that can be trimmed? Maybe there isn't, but that's Monday's conversation, you know, what can we look at, what can we do without, so that we can really push past. I'm not looking at Mr. Schooneman because he's probably like having heart palpitations right now because he's had some breathing issues in my office this week. Because I keep saying, but I don't like it, I don't like it, and he doesn't like it either. But he said, can I just run the numbers? Can I just let me run the numbers? And so I promised today that I will leave him alone until after next week, and we can really start seeing how close can we get, because we all are in agreement, and it's just, it doesn't feel good. So as much as we can get, you know, as close as we can get to better is where we're really pushing, and we are looking as a team at our departments just to see what is it that people can do without to try to help our lowest paid staff. So yes, we're 100% aligned with you on that.
So to answer your question regarding the hourly, so the process that I'm going through now that I've placed job categories on this new salary schedule, is to use the Metro RESA salary survey that we get every year. We participate in that, and so that gives us a good picture across not only our region but across the state in terms of what are the wages for these different job categories within school systems. And not all job categories are part of this survey, but most are. The major ones are for sure. And so as I have begun to review that, I'm not finished yet, the adjustments that we have made are keeping us very competitive with not only our region, but other areas of the state.
You said one question about your G scale. You said you had 114 grades before you started this. Where are you now?
33.
73?
33.
Oh, thank you.
I got a clarifying question. Okay, so when you were talking about a salary schedule, that's for full-time salaried staff, not part-time hourly staff?
So we have all of our employees are paid, most of our employees are paid on the salary schedule. For most, they are full-time working 40 hours a week. However, our bus monitors, our bus drivers, our nutrition workers all work less than an 8-hour day, but they are also on the salary schedule. And what that looks like on the salary schedule is a percentage. So we look at the hourly wage for a step one. And then if that salary is for an 8-hour day, but they only work 4 hours, then we take that hourly wage and multiply it by 4 hours. So you'll see it's roughly half, right, of that 8-hour-a-day wage. And the reason we do that is because we spread their payout over the 12 months. And so, and Mr. Schooneman might be able to give you more information on that, but while they do get paid for the hours they work, so if they work more than 4 hours a day, they're going to get paid for more than 4 hours a day. But having that salary amount lets us ensure that they have a base amount of pay every pay period throughout the entire year. Some school systems, not many left, but some school systems only pay their employees that are less than year-round during the time that they work. So they have to figure out how to, to make up that pay over the summer. But many school systems, and more are going to this model, pay their employees that are 9-month employees or 10-month employees all 12 months of the year.
Okay, so paras and subs are not included?
Oh, yes.
So subs.
Not subs. Subs are through ESS, but paras are full-time Clark County employees. They work 8 hours a day, and so they're on that salary schedule as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to word it as best I can.
Okay.
Okay, so and I'm gonna use bus drivers or bus monitors, for example. So those individuals who do that and then leave there and then go work somewhere in the school district, does this change benefit them twice or just once?
It's going to benefit them on any job that they carry out in our school system.
Okay,
Does that,
I'm gonna find you and ask you the rest of all the questions that are in my brain.
I'll tell you what, why don't we schedule a time for you to come in and sit down with me?
Perfect.
Yes.
I think one of the things she brought up that I'd like to know since I've been gone is when I left in December, we were talking about the bus drivers finding more hours and the bus monitors finding more hours. Did that happen?
It did.
And so a lot of those employees that wanted to work more than 4 hours are getting those hours as either hallway monitors or I forget what all the options were.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to recall them all right now, but we did offer that opportunity to anyone who wanted it in transportation, and those who wanted to take advantage of it did.
I know I see buses parked at some of our schools regularly.
And,
Why are those buses here? So our drivers work, so we do still have people
Okay.
taking advantage of that.
and the nutrition workers too, I think we were talking about giving them
Yes.
that option to do the extra work to make up the full hours. Okay, so that's
Yes.
going on. Great, thank you.
Yes.
This is for the benefit of Mr. Schuderman. 'Cause there's another aspect to this too, and I don't know if this has been addressed, and that is the retirement package.
That's the next step.
Okay, so of your presentation or? of-
No, sir.
Of our work.
This,
Okay.
this work has been all-consuming, if I may say so. I certainly have not minded doing it a bit, but it really has not allowed us to focus on some of the other things that we also want to do. So once we have this settled, then we had begun talks, and we've had them kind of sporadically throughout the year around the retirement package for PSERS employees.
Right,
So
right.
those who are not on TRS. And so we will be able to engage more fully in those conversations once we have this piece taken care of.
And I will say for the board members who are staying on the board, I really hope that we continue to push our legislators on that subject, because that should be state funded much more decently.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blankenship. Dr. Anderson, that concludes all of our presentations for this evening.
All right, so rather than adjourning, I think someone needs to move that we call.
We need to approve the personnel to amend the agenda for.
We added that item.
Oh, right, I didn't
Personnel.
reload my agenda. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So does anyone have any questions or comments about the personnel report? Okay,
I move that we approve the personnel recommendations.
Second.
all right, let's call a vote. All in favor?
I have a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
This is the what's the difference?
We shared earlier that there were just 3 people who were accidentally omitted. Their names just were left off.
On the last one?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. So they've been here, I know 2 of the 3 for years, and just accidentally were left off.
Okay.
So there's no one new being added, it's just people that realized they didn't have contracts.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, approved unanimously. So now we would need to make a motion to move to executive session. Would someone like?
Can I make one comment before we do? I just wanted to say, in terms of the human resources presentation, once the dust settles, I really hope that we're able to do a very distinct press release saying what steps that we've taken towards the living wage.
It's a big one.
And I think we can do that after the actual full budget goes, yes.
I move that we go into executive session.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are now moving to executive session.
Thank you.